Well, I think the important thing is that the government has given a very clear direction on how we deal with this problem. The Prime Minister, of course, setting up the inquiry in the two parts, one to look into allegations of wrongdoing and the other into regulation of the press itself. And I think that sets the course. It deals with what is a major problem in a very clear way. And I think it's entirely understandable that the Leader of the Opposition will continue to want to throw more issues into the mix, as it were. Whether it actually takes us forward in dealing with what is a substantial problem is, I think, very debatable.
But, I mean, it all looks rather reluctant, doesn't it? You mentioned there the inquiry, which for a long time Mr Cameron and others in your party maintained there was no need for one.
Well, as soon as it became very apparent of the scale of the problem, the scale of the phone hacking and the issues that were raised by it, the government acted very quickly and decisively to set up this inquiry. It's what everyone had apparently been calling for. Now they don't seem to think it's enough. It does set a clear direction in terms of how we deal with this issue. We will have the very rigorous examination by independent parties over the months ahead. However, we cannot afford to constantly be responding to one allegation or another, such as we've seen this morning.
OK. I mean, do you accept, though, that Mr Cameron's judgment is called into question by those, I mentioned it, those 26 contacts he's admitted with News Corporation executives since he was elected, including an invitation to Andy Coulson, his former Director of Communications, after he left Downing Street, an invitation to Chequers?
No, I don't think in any way that brings the Prime Minister's judgment into question, and I think it's actually tremendously transparent for the Prime Minister to put all this out there. Now, if you could be the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, the idea that you would not have contacts with senior media figures is, of course, preposterous. And I think that the Prime Minister has led the way, as he said he would, in creating greater transparency about the relationships between politicians and the media.
OK, saying leading the way on that. What about this issue that Mr Miliband's raising again today, the issue of looking at if News Corporation already and News International already have too much media power in this country, and looking at that stake that News Corporation has, on which they were going to build in the bid in Sky B, the company that owns Sky News, 39.9%. Should that be looked at? That's what Mr Miliband is saying.
Well, obviously, any government is going to continually want to look at how the press is structured, but we do have a very pluralistic press in this country. And I think that politicians would be wise at the moment not to overreact. There is a definite feeling of politicians wanting to, if you like, get their own back on some elements of the media. It's time for, I think, calmness and for people to look at these issues, yes, seriously, but in a proper timescale and without hysteria.
Well, would you be in the camp that says, well, if you look at the contribution of Mr Murdoch to British public life, over the fullness of time, in the 40-odd years he's been involved here, that it's been a positive contribution in that he built up The Sun, he built up The Times, of course he founded Sky Television?
I think you have to here divide off two issues. The first is the contribution that's been made from defeating the print unions at Wapping right through to building up a profitable business and making the printed press more profitable, not only for News International but for other newspapers as well, against the very clear wrongdoings that apparently have taken place in the News of the World. So I think that we need to examine the wrongdoing, we need to look at whether the regulations concerning the press are adequate, but I think that is quite separate from whether or not Mr Murdoch's corporation actually has helped the media over time in the United Kingdom.